Well, it's been a full week of, well, pretty much non-stop reform madness because, well, quite frankly, it's almost going in sort of a way that we did predict. And now that many of them have now been elected and now in their formal positions, this is when things could start to go, well, a bit wrong. And we've been hinting at just some of the chaos that is probably about to arrive. For example, in Leicestershire, they've removed completely your entire department that is responsible for protecting that area against flooding and building flood defences and making sure that residents are aware maybe if flooding is about to occur in your area, or maybe what happens to those residents that get, flooded, that they have maybe somewhere safe to go for a brief period of time so that they can let the waters go down. You understand why this department exists, right, guys? Apparently not Reform UK. However, we're not talking, of course, about there. Our first trip, believe it or not, is going to take us over to Staffordshire, where, for some reason, this new reform leader of the council that we'll be talking about in a moment in Staffordshire thinks that it's okay for, all these reform councillors who have ran for election and then done a runner, or in the case of this one, had some very dodgy, shall we say, statements to make about asylum seekers and how they should be handled. Has now been given the boot from the council, isn't going to apologise for, running him as a candidate when we're told that Reform UK has very strict vetting standards for all their candidates. Apparently not for this one, especially when it is also going to cost the council money. But his comments, of course, did not stop there, as at their first meeting, they also had some interesting things to say as well. Not only that, we'll be going over up to Aberdeenshire, where, believe it or not, you've got some, well, Scottish Tories maybe sensing which way the wind was blowing and jumping from the Tory party to now Reform UK. And surprisingly, this is actually the first Tory to do this. I thought there would be a maybe down south somewhere, but no, they've done it up in Aberdeenshire. So there you go. But before, of course, we do get into these news stories, please do remember to click the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there's the Patreon page, there's the Buy Me Coffee link, there's the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, there's the Pony Club down below as well. So thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel. Let's crack on then into this with this comments, first of all. So this one is the Renew Reform leader of Staffordshire, Ian Cooper, hitting back at the criticism now for these by-elections that they're going to have to run in Staffordshire because of this. So, Wayne Tilley, who won the Eccleshall and Goeshall ward for reform in May, faced criticism over a social media post about immigration and then stepped down. His resignation now means, of course, a by-election at an estimated £27,000 and cost the Conservative council leader, who called it a complete waste of money. To which Councillor Cooper responded from the Reform side that he would not take any lectures from, quote, other parties, saying that if you look at Staffordshire alone, the Conservative MP Chris Pincher stood down. If you look at the figures, the parliamentary by-election cost in the region of about £250,000, he added. Except, here's the thing. We know why Chris Pincher was stood down because of the, the allegations that were out there against him. But he had been an MP for quite some time beforehand. This wasn't a guy who should have been very clearly vetted beforehand, as Reform UK like to say that they have these really stringent vetting standards. And of course, don't be surprised by the fact that now some of these reform candidates that have especially been put in big, high-level council positions have now been having their social media looked at, because the Leicester Mercury came up absolute trumps with the 19-year-old, I believe it was, who was in charge of child services, who basically just said, depression, get over it. To which he's very quickly gone back now and started deleting all those social media posts. And it's again, according to the Leicester Mercury. So who knows what, should we say, tidying up many of these reform councillors have now been doing on their social media. But making a comparison between these two situations is just a complete non-starter. Their party's the one that stood. They stood these candidates, and less than a week later, or even a couple of days in this case, they stood down immediately. That is a waste of money to the people of Staffordshire. But it gets even better, because obviously he completely refused to apologise for this very unnecessary by-election. But we did now see the first meeting of the cabinet, and opposition councillors were putting questions to the reform councillors who are now in charge, saying, hey, what about special needs provision? What about the budget for the highways? Like, what are you going to do about these issues that are going to affect our locals, the people who voted for us that we're representing? How are you now going to, quote, make things better? Because remember, Reform ran an entire campaign saying, oh, we're better than these other established parties, to which their answers came back this, that they were waiting to mark the homework of the previous Tory-led council. That's not how you should be working. You should be going in straight away and going, yeah, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do different. But of course, they have no clue what they're doing. They are waiting to take orders from, you know, the unit that Nigel Farage is setting up down in London so that he can puppet master control all these councils. This isn't being run by local people. It's being puppet mastered by a unit in a London office somewhere. All these reform councils that have been taken over this way are being controlled that way. And it's going to end in an absolute disaster. That's why they're just marking their homework, because they haven't got a single clue about what they're going to do. So that's Staffordshire for you. The chaos that is going to erupt on Staffordshire Council. However, as I did say, we're going to go over to Aberdeen as well. This is what's currently going up on Aberdeen. So a Conservative councillor recently switched to Reform Scotland after being rejected as a Tory candidate. But oh boy, his reasons for switching gets kind of hilarious in a moment. So Dominic Launchet, a councillor now for the East Greylock, I think that's how you say it, ward in Aberdeenshire, announced on Thursday that it would be joining Nigel Farage's party, saying that there were, quote, many reasons, yes, many reasons for his decision, including recently being unable to influence the running of the council for the benefit of his constituents. What? Then that doesn't even make sense, because if you are elected a councillor and you are in the opposition, or maybe there's only, like, I don't know, one independent or one green or whatever, that would put you in the exact same position of this guy. But people still continue to do that because they are elected to represent their constituents in their area, not to, well, just be in power and influence the running of the council. Anyway, but it gets even better. But it is understood that Launchet applied to be a candidate in the 2026, but was rejected by the party. After 8 years as a council for Aberdeenshire Council, Council Ward, with 12 of the Conservative Party, I've decided that it is now in time for me to leave the Conservative Party of Aberdeenshire County Council administration and join Reform Scotland. The reasons he said for this decision are, of course, many, but I have particularly recently been unable to influence the running of the council for the benefit of my constituents. I have therefore decided to join Reform Scotland, and I look forward to working with my colleagues now in the unaligned group of councillors for the benefit of my constituents. Another Glasgow councillor, Thomas Kerr, who also himself defected from the Tories to Reform, said that the party was, quote, delighted to have him on board, as he pinpointed now the northeast east area of Scotland as a key area. This is, absolutely insane that they do this. This is insane that they just get away with just switching on this. I don't think they should be allowed just to switch, like this. I would say it of an MP. I would say it of a councillor as well. If you do switch, it should automatically trigger a by-election where you stand as that new party, because if you are switching parties, you stood on one party's particular manifesto, but you are now going to this other party, which might have a completely different manifesto, which you were not elected on. I think your constituency should have a say whether you are allowed to represent them in that area. Maybe it doesn't trigger a by-election, but maybe it should go to like a local referendum. This guy switched. Do you want to have another local election? Maybe it should just trigger a by-election instantly, which, to be honest, I think it really should. But yeah, not too surprising that, of course, you are now getting some switches. Most, of course, not surprisingly, from the Tories, because, well, as we've seen only very recently, they're not exactly in a good state at the moment, slipping drastically down, very, very much so in the polls. And of course, we talked about that recently on the Pony Club. Like I say, links down below to join the Pony Club, the YouTube subscription down below, or you can join the Patreon as well and gain access to those videos as well. So let me know what you think down below. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.